Man, it is really hard for me to believe that we are already 10 months through the year of 2020. I mean, sort of like it's already we're 10 months, but it also feels like this year has been 15 years long. Um, but my project this year has been to record and release a single every month. And actually, most months I've also put a video in there, and OMG, that's a lot of work. But this month's single is called Ride or Die. Really excited about this single. It's sort of it's like an angry love song. Is that a thing? It's Ride or Die is sort of that thing that we would say that, this is my girl, she's my ride or die. She's with me no matter what. We're square no matter what happens. Which is great if that's your lover. It's really a bad thing if that's how you are for a political candidate. Either side that you're on, if you're their ride or die, like you can't find anything wrong with your candidate and you can't find anything right with the other candidate. That's where a lot of us are in this country right now. And that, like, you're not a fan of a candidate, you're a member of a cult. So that's sort of what this dark, post-apocalyptic, sort of dystopian sound and feel of this song is sort of that juxtaposition between this is my ride or die. Hey, that's my girl, right? But am I the ride or die for somebody who doesn't really care about me? That's kind of bad. So anyway, that's what the song is about. But because it's a Matt Bell song, it's got to have a solo in it. So I'll put a solo in it, and my friend Kyle Pudence transcribed this for me as a favor, because I'm way too slow at that. If you need transcription work, he's the guy. You need to hit him up totally for sure. Does great work, super fast, and he's really, really good. Here is a transcription of the solo. We're going to listen to the solo, and then I'm going to talk to you about why I did what I did. All right, so here's the sheet music. Let's listen. All right, yeah, so you think this is a love song? Well, sort of. But let's talk about the solo. So I always talk about the fact there's sort of like 4 sections of a solo. There's the intro, like how do I get into the solo and hook people to like, oh, hey, let's listen to this solo. And then there's the build of the solo, there's the payoff, and then there's getting out of the solo. So this one is no different. The payoff's a little closer to the end of this one than I usually have. I usually like to get my payoff about 80% of the way through, and then gives me a chance to start wrapping the solo up and, tying up some loose ends and start pointing people to what's coming next. I did that a little later than usual in this solo, but that's what it was doing. So coming into this solo, one of the things that I will use as a technique is I'm going to create a bunch of tension right away. And it's going to let people know, all right, this is a dark, angry song. It ought to have a really tense solo. So we got to have tension and release. We start on an E flat chord, and I start on a D note on top of that E flat chord. So it's the major 7 of that chord, and this isn't a jazz tune, so major 7s are not like a thing that you're going to hear a lot. So I do the major 7 on that, and I'm looking at my notes here so I don't forget what I wrote down. But it's a major 7, and then goes to the 9, and then the flat 9, so the F natural and the E natural against that E flat chord. And it's sort of hitting just as we're coming to the C. So I got the major 7, the 9, the flat 9. Man, there's just a ton of tension in there. Then it comes to the C chord, and I start running down like almost a Phrygian, C Phrygian coming down, and then switches to a C Lydian at the end. So you can see that sort of walk down. Starts in a Phrygian mode, then goes to Lydian, both those pretty dark and strange modes. All right, so that's a lot of tension just in the first measure. Then it comes to the G. So how do we do that? We're going to release that tension. Plus, that's a ton of notes. So I've got to release all that movement and motion and tension has to be released by landing on the 1 and the 5, like the most stable 2 notes and half notes. We had a lot of movement. Let's get a little time in here, right? Let people breathe for a second. So then it goes back to the E flat. I go back to the major 7 again, but I start bending down maybe toward the dominant 7. It's okay. It's a little bluesier, just a little bluesier until we get to the C, where I'm basically just going to hit a C dominant 7 or a C minor 7 arpeggio. The first time we came through, it was E flat, C, G. So I'm actually going to feint to that by going to the B flat, which puts me on somebody's trying to call me, which puts me on the path to a flat 3 of the G chord. B flat would be the flat 3 of the G chord, but it's not a G chord. Surprise, it's a D. So I feinted back to that G, and then I bend down to the 5 of the D chord. So it's like, hey, going to G, nope, fooled you. All right. So then we come back to E flat again, basically do a E flat major 7 arpeggio again, but I end it on a really strange note. We're in E flat and I end on an A natural, which is like the, the sharp 4 of the E flat. And then that becomes the 6 of the C chord. So it's sort of a strange note. But again, I wanted to have that sort of dark and twisty feel. I come out of that 6 of the C chord back to some things that are going to feel a little more stable, the 5 and the dominant 7 of the C chord, which then pushes very nicely. That the dominant 7 of the C chord is the flat 3 of the G, which is coming next. So sort of hit that note a little early, do a nice quarter note walk down. I'm actually doing I'm about halfway between playing a note and playing a pinched harmonic on that. You just release a little bit of tension on the left hand, and what that does is help that note it just like squeaks a little bit, especially when you've got some distortion on there. And then we've got this whole tone walk up. I've got an A flat to a B flat to a C. So the whole tone walk up, I'd actually sort of contemplated doing some arpeggios, some walk down arpeggios where I'm walking down against that walk up. But I was like, I'll save that for another time. I'm just going to do a walk up here. There's 2 ways to kind of look at the notes I'm playing here. And the way I'm just doing a box pattern. It's 4-1, 4-1, right? So it's 4-1, 4-1 on the A string and the D string. And it's the short 4 and the short 1 on there. So there's 2 ways to look at this chord. You could either look at it as like an A flat add 9. So it's got that B flat in it. Or I was actually thinking more in terms of E flat, and it's an E flat sus4. So I was actually thinking more in terms of I'm going to play an E flat arpeggio above this A flat chord, but it's the 5 of the chord, so no big thing. So there's the A flat, move up to the B flat. So I just come up a whole step, come up again a whole step when it goes to C, but for the second half of that measure of C, I sidestep it up a half step. So I'm actually doing a C, basically a C add 2 arpeggio there, but then now I've gone to like a C sharp add 2 or D flat, depending on how you want to look at it. And then the end, honestly, what I did there is just basically just sort of a sound effect. When you're in distortion, I'm just like, I'm sort of just throwing fingers, 4-1, basically doing that 4-1 thing, but going back and forth between the E and the A string. And it gives it that really synthy sort of destructo sound, but I wanted to end it on the 5 of that D chord so that we've got some resolution to the whole thing. So the intro was coming in on this major 7, I've got the meat of the solo where I'm building up, walking up with the with my bass player all the way up to this basically sound effect, which is essentially the payoff in the solo. And then the last two beats of the solo, I just resolve all the tension to the 5 of the D chord. So we can watch and listen to this again after explaining all that. All right, so that's the solo for Ride or Die. Hope you guys like that. Hope that you're checking out all the singles that I'm releasing each month. I'm actually going to go down and break down a couple more of the solos that I've done so far this year in the same manner that I did this one. Just hope that that's a little bit of a teaching tool and give you a little bit of insight into what my thought process is when I'm coming up with these solos. So, all right, thanks for listening. See ya.